All right. Well, hello, and welcome everyone to our BG5 Live. Great to have each and every one of you here with us live in our Zoom room, or whether you're watching by Facebook or whether you're watching via the recording. Great to have you all here. Today is September 14th, 2021. This is episode 122. And today we're going to be taking a look at two traits because we are right at the end of the 47 and we're going to be jumping into the 6 next week. So we're going to be taking a look at trait 27 in quality 6 and also trait 6 in quality 1. And what we're going to be taking a look at today is oppression and conflict. Right, so we have an interesting topic here to talk about and things to pay attention to over the next week. All right, so before we get started, let's say hello to our panel. And again, everyone send healing vibes to Natalie. So hopefully she'll be back with us soon. And let's start with Anna. Hey, Anna, welcome.
Hi, glad to be here as always. And hello, everybody.
Great to have you, Anna. Again, an honor to have you back with us. And let's go to Shelley. Hey, Shelley.
Hello, everyone. Good to be here today. Great to see the oppression and conflict we're going to talk about.
Exactly. And Linda.
Yes, thank you so much. Happy to be here. And yeah, I'm looking forward to a good battle today. So let's dive in.
Exactly. Well, thank you, Anna and Shelley and Linda, for being here on our panel, and let's dive in. Also, as a reminder, our semester is getting started, so there's still time to register for the classes. And if you wanted to take part of our mini summit, it is now available as well. You can go to the BG5businessinstitute.com, go to resources, and check out our free resource library. There you'll see the mini summits. Linda just did her first class of the BG5 Foundation course. That's going to be posted up here soon as well. So you'll also be able to access that in the free resource library as well. So September, again, this emotionally inspired confusion to find meaning in the past, to resolve conflict, to push upward, working on what has been spoilt. So last week we took a look at abstraction in the 64. This is before completion. So we took a look at confusion. And today we are going to take a look again at two traits. We're going to take a look at realization, the 47, finding meaning in the past. Again, this is also oppression, and we'll talk about what that means and how that has been showing up over the last week. So we can look finding meaning from the past. So I think it's perfect. We're at quality 6, so we can take a look at the past week, take a look at where oppression has showed up in the next week. And we're also going to be taking a look forward with friction in the 6th. We're going to move into the 6th next week. So next week, we'll be taking a look at feeling, emoting, sensitivity, and conflict. So therefore, our oppression and conflict. After that, we can find determination, this pushing upward. This is the love of the body and coordination. And then to round out September, we have correction in the 18, working on what has been spoiled. So you can see the definition that we have today. We also have the 57 in communication. So with the 57 and the 34 and the 20, we're probably going to be more in tune, right? More present to what's happening in the now, and this energy that pushes us forward in the now as well. So, and personal power. So we can see that there's several strengths defined at the moment. So and also there has been a shift in the past and future direction. So last week we took a look at the 34 and the 20, which is creating that definition in our past and future direction. We took a look at it in quality 6 last week. It is now moved to quality 5. So we have in the 34-5, this personal power, annihilation. Oh, isn't that nice? We have conflict. We have oppression, we have annihilation. So one of the things that we'll be experiencing is this personal power. And what annihilation is, it's the total elimination of resistance It's the power to destroy completely. And once this is accomplished, the ability to transfer the power to normal purposes, or it can also be the feeling that nothing is permanently annihilated. So I see this conflict, the picture that I have them with them pushing against the wall. I think, with the oppression and the conflict, there's this duality. There's these two sides. We're also in the quarter of duality, which is also, this connection and bonding, but also duality. So we're pushing against each other. And I love demonstrating this when I do live workshops as well, where you push and you push and a push and you push, and neither side is right, neither side is wrong. Everybody's pushing. But what if you turned this conflict into a dance? So as soon as someone, steps back, right, then they can actually lead, and it becomes more of a dance versus this conflict. And so I think we're right on the precipice of that, but we can feel that that intensity. We also have contemplation with realism. What is fact and what is fake? We talked about this last week with illusion and delusion. So contemplation in and of itself is no guarantee of success. The success of expressing awareness through detail, or it can also be where reality creates dissatisfaction and adds to instability, right? So we can see a lot of this showing up in the world right now. And this is, what's happening in the environment, in the background. So something important to pay attention to. And we're going to layer on top of that what we're going to be taking a look at today with today's theme. So before we do that, I didn't know if anyone on our panel, Anna or Shelley or Linda, if there's anything that you want to add or anything that you see with this annihilation and realism.
I have a comment.
Yes.
I loved your analogy there of the resistance and then the movement, because just in personal relationships, especially ones that you're really bonded in with your spouse or your kids or a best friend or something, and even, the significant relationships in a work environment, you press against each other. You can't help but have your individual world at stake, sort of, in certain moments. And when you'll get the resistance and you both have your point, but at a certain point, if the bond is healthy, you can start there's a natural wave that does start to happen, and one person backs down or one person steps up, and then you have the movement, which is a very organic part of conflict.
Yes, exactly. Beautifully said, Anna. Yeah, so it's something that we're going to start to see this theme not only in this background frequency, but also as we take a look at today's trait and tomorrow's trait as well. Anything, Linda or Shelley, that you would like to add before we continue?
Well, I was just, after my teaching, taking a look at my phone, and I just saw a news thing about that there are massive protests in the Netherlands. So I feel like, yeah, they are pushing against each other. I feel like things are building up, and that, also I'm triggered about the realism, about our reality. It's about also finding your personal power in moving forward, and like realizing, contemplating about what's going on, and realizing, is this what my future direction must look like? So we are getting other restrictions. They will go another direction, and I feel like there is lots of people are not really happy with that. So I feel like we are going to see more things show up the coming weeks. So
Yes,
we stay tuned.
exactly. So it's like a tension is building, and this again is built into the design. We're going to sort of walk through the story of this today, which I find absolutely fascinating in how the 47 is then followed by the 6, right? Which right before that we had confusion. So we had confusion leading into this oppression, leading into this to this friction, and then ultimately this resolution. But this is what also, it's built into the design for a reason, to refresh things, to when things are at a standstill and when things are stuck, how do you break free of that as well? So let's dive in and take a look at today's theme. So today's theme is about realization. This is the 47. Last week we took a look at the 64. The 64 is what's on the other side of the 47. So we have this confusion, and this confusion then gets turned into a concept through this realization. Now, if we take a look at what's on the other side of the 47, it's the 22. And the 22, when we take a look at the 22, it is openness. So, and it's about listening. So, with this oppression, with this realization, there also needs to, it's grounded in being able to listen for what's there. So when we take a look at 47, 47 is the mental capacity to review the past to find meaning that others may have missed. So when we're talking about both confusion, the 64 we took a look at last week, and the 47, it is based in the past. So again, we're looking and reviewing what's happened in the past and what are the details and how do we put all of these pieces together. So it's a restrictive and adverse state as a result of internal weakness or external strength, or both. So it can feel like a weakness. This is part of what the oppression is. The oppression also is that when we use this particular function and this particular trait, if you use it for yourself, it can feel very oppressive, very restrictive. Whereas when you use this to inform others and use it in a way that can, bring ahas to others, that's where it really comes into play. Again, it's oppression waiting for the moment of realization. And it's the fear of futility, right? Like resistance is futile, right? It's this fear that no matter what you do, you'll never be able to find a solution. And so again, it can be very pressurized from the other side. So it's waiting for that right moment, for that realization, for that aha to come into view. Because otherwise it can be like, oh, you're trying to figure it out, and you're trying to figure it out, and you're trying to figure out, just like this picture, you have, everything doodle, you're trying to figure out your way out of the maze, and it doesn't make any sense. And there can be this fear that you'll never be able to find your way out of the mess. But again, this realization is this aha moment that all of a sudden, all of the pieces click, but it's waiting for that moment and not succumbing, not being overwhelmed by the pressure of it. And when reflecting on experience, you will not see the full picture immediately. That's the problem. That's why it feels oppressive, because you don't see the whole picture. You only see these different parts. And when you focus on the parts as opposed to the big picture, you may not see, what ultimately becomes that aha moment. Confusion inherent in retrospection can create mental anxiety. So there's a lot of mental anxiety that can happen. So you may have noticed over the past week that you've had this mental anxiety, that you've had this mental pressure, and you're not quite sure where it's come from. Especially if you've been watching the news, there seems to be a lot of oppression showing up in different ways, shapes, and forms. And if you can step back and if you can trust the process, you will eventually cycle through to that aha moment. Oppression comes when you try to make sense of your own life. This trait and this strength is not about making sense of your own life. Your mind is for others. It's not for yourself. Remember, in our entire design, we are not designed to make decisions from the mind. All of the ways that we make decisions are through our body intelligence. And so again, our mind is for an outer authority for others. The mind is not for us to make decisions. And if you try to make decisions from this place of trying to figure it out and trying to figure out your own life and trying to figure out how this is and try to push and pressure it, it's not going to work very well. All right. So again, oppression comes when you try to make sense of it for your own life. That's where it can feel overwhelming. So how does this show up for all of you? I have the 64 on the other side, but I don't have the 47. We talked about this last week. I know Anna has the full strength, and Linda, you don't have either, and Shelley is the and Shelley, you have the 47. So I'd love to hear from you, Shelley, first how this 47 shows up for you.
Well, I'm so glad I'm so much older and wiser now, because and having found BG5, I did used to have quite a lot of mental pressure, constantly trying to figure out my own life and, you know, where am I going? What am I supposed to be doing? And yeah, even in this past week, it's been intensified. And even though I have the knowledge of this now and recognize what's happening, it's still really hard to let go of the pressure. It's still really hard to just kind of relax and let things flow. But I'm so glad I know how to do that now, because it does relieve a lot of it, that's for sure. And I was looking at the qualities too, because I have this in the 5, and that's the saint, which at first I thought I was a little embarrassed that that was the trait I had. But then I thought back to a lot of times when people have actually called me a saint and said, oh my gosh, you have so much patience. You're so willing to listen. Hearing you say today that the 22 is on the other side of it, I also have that unconsciously. In fact, that's my unconscious core essence and grounding and balance. So I've been in many, many situations where I have just remained objective and listened to what's going on both sides of the story. I'm often the one that is the translator between two opposing points of view that I can see are happening, and I can understand both. And so I end up mediating or facilitating between people. That's happened a lot of my life. And I remember working in a shop, and I had a particularly rude customer that I spent an hour with, helping them figure out what it was they wanted. And when they finally left, I had all of the rest of the staff lined up at the counter saying, oh my God, how did you put up with that? They were so rude. They were so terrible. And I said, yeah, they were really just having a bad day and needed some help getting through what they were trying to do to make decisions. So that is a particular skill set I've recognized that I have that's maybe a little different. And so I tend to be this objective person looking at everything that's happening all around, and I'm always being able to see both sides of the story.
Yeah.
It's helped a lot in my business life as well.
Yeah, exactly. And that's a great illustration of how that 22 plays in as well, right? Really being able to listen for what's there. Because in listening, you can, the pieces start to come together in a different way.
That's right. And it comes with it a curiosity to try to understand what's actually going on for each person. And I guess that's all part of getting to that realization of gathering all the information from both sides, trying to make sense, trying to understand what's going on. And then I get the aha that allows me to help them communicate together. So yeah, it's interesting to hear how just learning about this through BG5 really helped me understand myself a lot better.
Yeah. Yeah. Beautifully shared. Great example, Shelley. Thank you so much. How about for you, Anna, and having the entire strength? I'm curious to know how it shows up for you.
Well, just like Shelley said, I have the benefit now of being older, which actually does help. And I have the 22 twice. I would say, having the whole strength, one of the things that BG5 helped me understand is this isn't for me to figure out my problems. It's about putting I would say what's relevant to me in the 47 is context. Because when you have a conflict, there's a context to somebody's beliefs or stance or whatever the polarization is. And it's that moment of polarization where you get the resistance, just like we were talking about at the beginning, this pressure, this tension. But there's a natural organic process that happens if you let it keep moving, and the context reveals itself, because all the pieces won't fit together unless you understand the context, the ground that they're standing on, or I'm standing on, the basic value for what you're standing up for, or what you feel oppressed about, or what you object to. And and Shelley, you just said this beautifully, when you allow the sides to kind of start expressing themselves, you start understanding the context that the thought process is in. And then you can mediate between the two differences. And what I find interesting is that 47, even though it's mental, it's abstract, it requires your body to be involved. And a lot of us have this really strong, and this comes into the whole idea of decision-making strategy, through evolution, through culture, through religion, through all our influences. Our bodies haven't really truly been given a voice, but that's a really important voice to listen to 22, to be involved with. And it takes a little time to start listening to the voice of your body, because that's what's going to make sense in the 47. That's how the 47 finally goes to the aha, is that your body starts being able to move. Because when we're really working hard to figure something out, our bodies are tense. That's probably one of the biggest ahas I had early on in my life, in my early adulthood, was how tense I would get trying to think something through. And if I learned about meditation and body work and all that stuff early on, thank goodness. And I was able to start relaxing. And that's when my body would start talking. And then the process would organically evolve to a moment of, oh, got it. Oh, I understand. And trusting the process is one of those classic words that used to really make me mad, But really what it is the process of listening, of allowing your body to speak, is what creates the trust, because you have a result of being able to relax into whatever the aha was.
Yes. Yeah. And beautiful illustration of, both the 22 and the 47 and that whole strength. Yeah. Beautifully said.
Thanks for saying that, Anna, because you made me realize that I'm often feeling my way through that conversation, feeling my way through with the listening. And the aha comes as kind of that synesthesia, get a flash in the brain and a feeling all at once, that realization comes as a whole package. So yeah, thanks for putting words to that. That was beautiful.
Yeah, very, very nicely done. Anything, Linda, that you would like to add?
Well, I'm without any of those traits. I'm listening in awe, and what comes to mind is also for me trusting the process. That stands really, it's really for me the most important thing if I listen to your stories. But not only trusting the process, I feel like it's trusting life. Because I was also triggered by what you shared, Anna, about the context. And I feel like going through everything that's going on in our lives that can change, and especially now with the 22 yeah, the emotional waves. I feel like literally going with the flow of life makes us realize in the right timing what's meant for us to be known. And I don't know why I say it this way, but that's really what I feel. And I feel like we as a humanity, yeah, get invited, especially in these times. And also if you don't have this trait, but now we feel the influence, but to sit back and to realize literally that life is a process and that things will show up in a way that it's meant for us. And when we need to know something, the timing will show up. And I feel like everything that's happening right now, and especially when you take a look at also the openness in your design, I feel like we take in everything in our body unconsciously, and we and I don't know, maybe also if you don't have the 47, but I feel like also for myself, not having this trait, sometimes I just know. So I'm really open. So I'm just, they can, you can tell me everything. But I almost cannot even find words, because I feel like it's so profound that we are able to listen to what our body tells us in order to realize what's there for us and then share it with others. And yeah, that's my perspective in hearing all this information.
Very, very powerful. Yeah, thank you for sharing that, Linda. And it actually ties into the trait or the quality for today as well, because it's in quality 6, and quality 6 is fertility. And again, it's that's part of the fear of the 47, feeling like things are futile. And so it's a difficult position from which there is no ease. There is no elevation. There isn't a polarity. But the challenge is that life as an ordeal stripped of realization, the strength of will alone may find a way to adapt and survive, but without hope or ever overcoming oppression. So in a sense, it's removing this resistance. So again, what we talked about at the very beginning, that's part of the background frequency as well, is just kind of this resistance. And in a sense, this resistance is futile. The more kind of we resist and the more we push back, nothing gets solved. But when we are able to listen at a deeper level, what we were talking about, the 22 on the other side, which grounds it, gives us a different perspective in which to look at the whole. So I think it plays in beautifully, Linda, with what you just said, and also, Anna and Shelley as well.
I have another comment in the challenge here. The challenge is about adapting to survive, but with the listening, you're able to thrive. The aha part gives us that ability to go to the next level or to the next frequency, to evolve. And that's where we thrive.
Yeah, it's interesting that I don't know why this came up, but I've been having an earache, and so I don't know if it's like connected to this at all, but it was just kind of interesting because with listening, I don't have the 47, I don't have the 22, but at the same time kind of having a bit of an earache as well, just paying more attention to the body and listening just seems like an interesting observation. Yeah. Anything, Shelley or Linda, that you would like to add about this quality 6?
Well, that the hope of overcoming oppression. I think that in the first part of my life, first 20 years, I felt that a lot. There was so much going on in my childhood, but also in the 70s, 60s, 70s, and into the early 80s. where women were just starting to find a voice. I was just entering the workplace where things were still pretty oppressive. I had more opportunity, obviously, than my mom had, and my grandmother. But so I had that feeling of oh man, will I ever be able to get through this or out of this? So I've definitely had that feeling. And I think also the other thing I have in the 47.5 is the ability to relate to my oppressors and help the people that are being oppressed by them at the same time. So I was always sort of almost driven or unconsciously gravitated to wanting to try to understand the oppressors at the same time that I was part of the oppressed and with the group of the oppressed. And that felt really uncomfortable, and it felt really scary as I was doing it. And at the same time, I couldn't not. So it's just really interesting to me to learn about BG5 and start to understand some of what that was that I was living through, and how this all works together. So yeah, that's just what came to me about that.
Yeah, exactly. Interesting. Wow. Yeah, thank you for sharing that, Shelley. Now, we're going to talk about the celebrity that has the 47, and then we're going to take a look at the 6 as well, because we're going to see how this futility turns into. I had this as the title and I couldn't say it, so I erased it. But futility moves into fertility. So,
That is
so
a
we're going to take
mouthful.
a look at that in just a moment. But before we do that, let's take a quick look at our celebrity and the life work theme. I have Oliver Stone. He's a film director, producer, and screenwriter, and his life work is about informing. So the 47, the life work of the 47 is informing, one of them. So you have the social skills to use the past to inspire, to turn people's attention towards the plight of those who are oppressed. This is informing as an art. So if we take a look at the movies that Oliver Stone has produced, he's an American film director, producer, and screenwriter, and many of Stone's films focus on controversial American political issues during the late 20th century. Like his subject matter, Stone has become a controversial figure in American filmmaking, with critics accusing him of promoting conspiracy theories and of misleading real-world events or misrepresenting real-world events and figures in his work. So it's kind of interesting, this informing, and again, what is true, what is not true? Is it conspiracy theory or not? It seems like there's a thinner and thinner line between what is and what isn't. And so I think, again, this is a real beautiful example of what this trait is all about, taking a look at some of the films that he's produced, from Wall Street to JFK to Born on the 4th of July to Snowden, to JFK to Platoon to The Doors, right? So in seeing his work, what he is doing, he is informing. So I find that quite fascinating. Again, always really fascinating to see the celebrities that have this. Yes, Anna.
I thought of this before we started, and then just now you reminded me, in the description of the book, it talks about little clips, making sense of little clips of life, little film pieces, little memories. There's energy in all of those. And when you make a film, just like when you write a composition of some sort, you edit. And this process of editing creates a context. And it again, you can arrange the thought process by editing it a certain way or not. But the important part of the 47 is not to edit it, but to allow each part to be alive. And that's, what we've talked about with waiting for the aha, waiting for the information to be there. But as soon as you edit something out, you're not going to get the aha. You're not going to get the realization. It needs to be inclusive. All of those parts need to be there. And that creates controversy because a lot of times people don't want this part to be included in that story. Just like in our media, in our education, all kinds of places that happens. But I find that really important, a really significant part of the 47 is to really allow all the pieces to be there, because that is the organic energy behind the aha occurring.
Yeah, beautifully said, Anna. Love that.
Yeah, and actually I can add to that, Anna, because you've just helped me realize that that's kind of when I'm listening to people, I'm trying to draw out as much of what's really there. My 22 is about directness, so direct conversation. So pulling out of everyone around what's really there that you need to share, that you want to talk about, because I also have the open throat, so I can tell what's not being said. And that's, to me, what's always led to that realization. It's what's always brought the aha moment forward, when the pieces all finally connect. People can hear them, experience that together. So thanks for saying that way.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, and speaking of that, with Oliver Stone being a film director, producer, and screenwriter, right? It is pulling together all of those different pieces. Yeah, very fascinating. So let's kind of take a look at the next step. So taking a look at next week's theme, which we move into tomorrow, which is trait 6. And trait 6 is also the source of the emotional wave. So what comes after futility? If you have collective circuitry, realize that you are fulfilled through others and others are fulfilled through you. Right. So the circuitry that the 47 happens to be in is in this collective circuitry of sharing. So again, realize that you are fulfilled through others and others are fulfilled through you. So the futility for I don't know why I'm having such a hard time saying it. The futility is rooted in recognizing that it's hard to find those that can make sense of things, right? Because again, we have all of these pieces, and how do we make sense of all of these pieces? So when you get to the point of futility, you realize that nothing makes sense. Everything is confusing. And we may be at that point where it's like things in the news, things in the world, things in our life just really don't make sense. And when you recognize how many things don't make sense, where do you go? You get emotional because things don't make sense. So you go directly to the trait of the emotional wave. You go to the trait 6 of conflict. So again, just kind of moving us into the next trait, this trait of conflict and friction. So this is the source of the emotional wave. So again, this is what I was talking about earlier, moving from futility to fertility, right? Because this is also a very fertile trait as well. So it's conflict, it's feeling, it's emoting, it's sensitivity. So the friction you create when you are with another has creative potential. So it produces heat, and heat is essential for growth. So when the conflict is resolved or resonance is reached, there is an opening that you can then proceed. So again, there's this conflict, there's this friction, right? And then again, this opening then becomes possible. And that's where progress can move forward. So the fundamental design component of progress is this friction. So we are in this period of, again, it feels oppressive. It feels like there's friction, right? You were talking about the protests happening. So again, that friction starting to arise. This is what creates an opening for us to potentially move in a different direction or see things in a different way. But it may get emotional to start with. The law that growth cannot exist without friction. I want you to think about that for a moment. Growth cannot exist without friction. Friction is necessary for growth to happen. So it's the energy for producing life itself. This is part of the strength of sexuality as well. So again, this is what we're talking about with fertility as well. It's making things fertile, right? And it's the energy for producing life itself, for to create human life. So it's either open or it's closed to intimacy. And it's waiting for an opening. So again, timing is important. So one of the things that we've talked about a lot is timing, 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 timing. Timing is everything, right? So again, if you are over emotional, it may not be the time to act, especially if you have emotional intelligence defined. This is in emotional intelligence. So we move from the mind into this emotional intelligence. And again, if you do have it defined, you need to wait for clarity because there is no truth in the now. So one of the things to take a look at, especially over this next week, is realize that we may end up getting very emotional this week, right? This is the source of the emotional wave. And to wait until there's clarity, wait until the emotions are not high. Or wait until the emotions aren't in the depth of the emotions as well. So you're not on an emotional high or emotional low. It's waiting, and the timing is going to be important over this next week. So something to pay close attention to. So I'd love to hear from our panel any observations you have or things for people to look for as we, again, take this journey from the 47 to the 6.
Yes, I have trait 6 in my design. And I love the sentence, growth cannot exist without friction, because it's kind of a life's motto for me. And also what I have experienced myself, a lot of friction, but I also can handle it very well. And also what I feel like when I work with clients, when they are with me, and I don't hope they feel like the picture, like, oh my goodness, what is she doing and saying to me? But I always see and motivate people that when they are in the worst days of their lives, and also in crisis or conflict or friction, that I always say that's also a good thing. I know you cannot feel it. I know you cannot make sense of it. And that's maybe why friction comes after realization. Things come into life or in your life at the right timing. So when you are experiencing friction most of the time, that is a signal that growth is on its way. There will be a quantum leap. There will be a new way to connect, a new way, new doors will open, and it's painful. It's really it is, but and just as it says here, it produces the heat essential for growth. Because if everything is running smoothly and your emotions are, because I feel like this is the wave that when in interaction with others, something can happen. So you have to be put in motion to really do something else than you have done previously in your life. Because if you are still doing the same things, you get the same results over and over again. And life wants you at the right place in your life where you use your talents, your skills, and everything. So at least that's my experience. And I always have to laugh because sometimes I feel like I'm in control. Oh, everything is right, and I think I'm driving. But I realize, there it is again, more and more that you have to surrender to life. Things are showing up, and that can make you feel like the little things on the image at times. But when I look back, I can see that all those moments has led me to where I am now. And I needed the friction, I needed the heat, because when it's comfortable, I'm not going to step away from what I was doing. So yeah, and that's also, yeah, waiting for an opening. Timing is important. Yes, it's the same as I was feeling out with trait 47. It's surrendering to life, that it will present at the right timing, the right things for you to take on. And I also feel that when it presents it to us, we also have the strength to go through it.
Yes, exactly. Exactly. And Linda, you were talking about not only friction, but conflict. And if you take a look at what grounds the 6, you'll notice what grounds the 6 is the 36, right? Which is crisis. So, so again, just knowing what the weather is for this upcoming week, there may be crisis, there may be conflict, there may be friction, it may be uncomfortable, you may be all over the place on your emotional wave. So don't make it wrong, just realize it's part of what's happening in the background. And, what we were taking a look at earlier, we're like, what's fact, what's fiction, where is this, sort of standstill of this pressure going on, and being able to be in it and watch it and observe it and not get caught up in it. And maybe you do get caught up in it, and then you can realize, oh, well, there's that conflict, there's that friction. You'll be able to see it much quicker. Anything, Shelley or Anna, that you would like to add here?
Yeah, actually, I've just recently been, somebody brought the book to my attention, Who Moved My Cheese? It was very popular back in the 90s, I think. And so I read it again, and I read it in kind of the context of BG5, and it's about people becoming so complacent. There's 2 little men and 2 little mice, and it's about becoming so complacent that they don't grow, that there's no friction in their life, that they've completely missed the fact that the entire environment around them is completely changed. And 2 of them end up leaving or getting laid off, losing their job or whatever. But the 2 mice were the most interesting to me, because they were running around smelling the cheese, using all of their bodily instincts to notice when the cheese is starting to go bad. And it's just really a fascinating tale to remember that life is constantly moving. There's a constant roller coaster ride happening, whether we want to admit it or not. And for those of us that try to maintain this steady, secure, safe environment, it's actually not real, and it's very stifling, very oppressive. From the 47, that's really what oppresses us, is not being willing to ride the waves of life, as Linda was saying, that life is constantly moving and changing. And if we're not paying attention with all of our senses to what's actually happening around us, and all of the BG5 stuff gives us so many tools to do that. That's actually creating, having the friction is what allows us to get through those ups and downs, that allows us to grow again and continue to grow and change. And somebody in the chat Tanya had asked about friction is necessary for growth. How does that work regarding nature? For example, the tree's flowers bloom. It doesn't appear to be in conflict. But if you look at the process of a tree, starting from a seed, the struggle it goes through to just get out of its own shell and start to grow and to get the light and to continue to grow, they grow for hundreds of years. They're constantly stressed by outdoor weather and just whatever's happening on the planet, with people, with pollution, with all of it. Everything in life is going through the process of friction to continue growing. So yeah, I don't actually have the 6. I have the 59 though. So the 6 is a bit of a pressure shadow trait for me. I avoided conflict my whole life, getting really emotionally triggered by any kind of conflict, to a place of growing into being able to withstand conflict between other people and help them with it. My own conflicts are end up being quite an emotional ride for me, though. When I do allow them to finally come, they're pretty dramatic, but they also feel very cathartic when I get through the other side and I realize how much I've grown and changed and learned, and how much better I feel having gone through the process. So I think it's something with, as our emotional intelligence is increasing on the planet, we're all starting to learn how to deal with emotional things, because we've been oppressed for centuries. We've had our emotions oppressed. Don't emote, just keep it stuffed down. So that's another thing that we're realizing now too, that we can't keep stuffing our emotions. We have to be able to let them out as part of being human, to emote. And I think it's part of why people are fear the friction and conflict, because we've never been allowed to actually process it or engage with it. And we're just now starting to learn how to do that. So it's going to be interesting to see how that continues to evolve as we move forward here in time.
Yeah, beautifully said, Shelley. Yeah, and again, you can sort of see this continuity as we move through, and what's on, in a sense, the other side of that oppression, and how that conflict shows up, etc. And I also have the quality as well. This is the quality that we move into tomorrow, with quality 1 of retreat. The realization that wasting one's resources against overwhelming odds is not courage, but folly. So the elevation is the emotional stability to accept conflict, the power of regeneration that can embrace retreat as a phase, but not a failure. On the other side of it, the challenge is the emotional instability in times of conflict, the inferiority complex where retreat is experienced as personal weakness. And so I think one of the things that's really important as we move into this week, especially in feeling the oppression and the conflict, sometimes you need to retreat. Sometimes you need to just take care of yourself. And follow your decision-making strategy, because sometimes, again, embracing retreat as a phase and not a failure, because sometimes people push through and push through and push through, and they have to prove something, or the odds are against them. And sometimes it's that retreat that allows you to regain your strength. And again, seeing it as a phase and not a failure, versus the challenge of that, where it can be where you see it, you don't give up because you think it's personal weakness. I would love to hear, Anna, what you have and what you see around this.
I do have 6 in the 4th line. But I was going to talk about the seed, like Shelley was saying. If you really, you can look on YouTube videos and watch a seed sprout. This is, to me, it's fascinating. I'm a gardener. I love all that stuff. But if you actually kind of watch the process, the seed is under pressure from inside, and that pressure creates heat. It begins to open. There's a little sprout on both ends, for the top and the bottom, and it's pressing against the environment of the soil. And they're co-creating. The soil and the seed are co-creating this experience. The soil has to give a little, the sprout has to keep going, and there's this constant cycle of these phases where there's an expansion, and then the environment gets too tight, too small, too constricting, oppressive, and then the sprout pushes a little, and then there's the opening. There's leaves start sprouting, roots start sprouting. And in this world of emotional stability, without a root, you don't have a whole lot of stability. It takes time to grow that. And when you're in a new phase of conflict, you don't have all the pieces yet. It's kind of like with 47, you don't have all the bits yet. And so it does take time for these different stages to occur. Once you have a little bit of root, then you can start moving through the wave. And I find it fascinating if you watch these little videos of plants sprouting, they're wiggling, they're moving, they're going through this dance that we talked about. And of course, they can become the tree that Shelley was talking about. But the emotional stability has to do with having at least enough root, enough realization that there is a process, like Linda was talking about, that there's nature's intelligence involved in these different phases, and they're not weaknesses. We personalize those. They might be vulnerable, but that's different than weak. And there's this constant set of phases that we go through of expanding and meeting the edges of something that's pressing on us. It's actually a very beautiful dance if we have a little bit more stability, and over the years, the great big tree will have some root, and then eventually something knocks the tree down, the weather, the environment, whatever's going on. So to me, I like to have the perspective of larger cycles, natural cycles, cycles of nature. And then we don't have to personalize all the emotional stuff so much, deciding whether something's a weakness or we're just vulnerable in that moment.
Exactly. And that retreat there's periods of growth, there's periods of rest, there's periods of growth, there's periods of rest. And so that's part of this retreat. It's not, when you're constant, you just don't have the energy. This retreat with this friction is this ability to also step back when needed. I love that. Really beautiful, Anna. All right, so we'll hear from the entire panel on what to pay attention to and what to look at in this upcoming week. Again, I just wanted to quickly remind you to check out the mini summit, to check out our free resources. Also get your free report if you want to know do I have the 6 or do I have the 47? You can take a look and download your own chart at the BG5businessinstitute.com. You can also follow along to see what the quality is. It might be fascinating, especially this week as we're in conflict, to understand what's happening with that friction as we go through each day. So you can see that also in our free resource library. You can also check out the BG5 Live to see the quality of the day. And again, registration still open for our classes, so make sure that you sign up. And the early registration is actually ended, but you can still sign up over this next week for the classes that are starting. So let's wrap everything up. I would love to hear from each of our panel. What are some ahas, or what are some things to take away and to pay attention to in this upcoming week? Would you like to start, Linda? Yes.
Yeah. I was just realizing it's fascinating how things work, but that what we were talking about in taking a look at realization and friction, and also the beautiful analogy of the seed, I also feel like this is the analogy of life itself. I feel like we just described the hero's journey, and I feel like we are in a time that we are really, really, pressured in a kind of way, because things are changing so much, so things are getting more dense, that we go with the flow of life, and that we surrender even when things are getting harsh and difficult, and that we can trust that we know when to retreat, and we have to take our rest and to contemplate on things, but also when to take the next step. And in the end, we will come above the ground and see the sunshine and feel the air and breathe in the beautiful air and see maybe a different world. So because we are going to 2027, we are moving forward, and I feel like that we that it's also in with the retreat to feel your strength, to feel your inner passion, like the seed. It wants to flourish, it wants to bloom, it has only one goal, and maybe that will take a little time, maybe it will be wiggling its way, but that's what life is all about. You go this way, oh, not working, you go that way, not working, until you reach your fullest potential. I feel like it's time to feel like the seed, the drive to thrive. And I feel like this is a beautiful time, and that's what I want to give our listeners, that you realize that life is all about going with the flow, following your decision-making strategy. That's your body consciousness, that's your body wisdom, and then everything plays out exactly the way it should be.
Beautifully said, Linda. Thank you so very much. Beautifully said. How about for you, Anna?
My takeaway or my suggestion for the week would be to use these words not as concepts, but as experience. You know, we use language to describe things, but then we get so focused on the words as a description or puts us in a box. So we've been talking about conflict and friction and oppression and realization and all these different things. I would suggest you just play or allow or muse on or experience your body. What is that experience of your own of conflict? What's your own experience with oppression? What's your experience? And that means, you know, you might be feeling different sensations, and you might judge them good or bad, comfortable or not comfortable, but they're all in. If you let each one of those come through the wave, then you'll go, oh, this is very natural. This is fine. And some things are not comfortable at all, you know. But if these words, if our language actually translates and we're allowed to experience these words, that's where we get our ahas and our openings and the growth and the things we're talking about.
I love it. I love it. Really beautifully said, Anna. Thank you so much. And Shelley.
Wow, yeah, that's so beautiful, you guys. Yeah, I would carry on with what Anna's talk and Linda's talked about as well, that really we're here to experience this three-dimensional world, and we've been oppressed for quite a lot of time to not really feel it or allow ourselves to feel it or fully experience it. We've been experiencing it from our head and ignoring our bodies. And I think we're moving into this time now where our bodies are starting to become more alive, more attuned, more aligned, and we're becoming more aware that these are natural processes, not things to be oppressed. And if we're going to ever fully express our full uniqueness and our full potential, we have to be able to allow ourselves to feel and experience all of it. And that, you know, surrendering to life, realizing that we are held and supported, and that life is this dance of you know, oppression, realization, conflict, or, you know, friction to conflict, and that we're going through this flow of all of the cycles that, you know, we talk about, and that it's an ongoing process. We are not static beings by any means, yet we've been treating ourselves that way. We've been oppressed into being static beings, and we're just not. So I'm really excited for this time we're in to allow ourselves to open up and really start to feel and experience life through this amazing body we have that has so many sensitivities if we allow it. So maybe give yourself time in if it's in retreat or however you do it, to just really allow yourself to feel and to experience all of your senses and your emotions and your intuitions and your gut response, and to play with that over the next week, because it'll be more enhanced, I think, in this next week, that we'll be able to feel it more acutely, perhaps. So
Yes. Yeah.
enjoy.
Yes, exactly.
And
Right,
none of it's good or bad. It just is.
Exactly. And I love that you said that, Shelley, because again, with all of this, it is the awareness, is enjoying the ride. It's the roller coaster where, we're moving into the source of the emotional wave, and the emotional wave is ups and downs and ups and downs. And if you can enjoy the ride. So my recommendation for this week is enjoy the ride. I love what Anna said in, pain, and what Shelley said in paying attention, to your body, getting in tune with it, to get in touch with what those words really mean, experience them, cry if you need to cry, laugh if you need to laugh, retreat when you need to retreat, push forward when it's time to push forward. And really just, again, we have this negative connotation, as we talked about, of conflict and oppression and confusion. What's on the other side of that? And what's on the other side is very magical. So follow your decision-making strategy and enjoy the ride. And with that, we're going to wrap up today's BG5 Live. It has been an absolute honor, and we look forward to seeing you all next week. Thanks, everyone. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
Bye.
Thanks. Bye-bye.
Enjoy.